Today we are again here for another class of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification course, and we are in the Respect unit, as most of you might know. For those of you that are just tuning in on the internet, we are in the Respect unit. I'll show you a picture of the book right there, the overhead. That's the Peaceful Solution Respect unit, and we're in that tonight. Of course, we'll go to and from. We'll be in the Respect unit, and we'll pop into the Character unit for a little bit, self-control, acceptance, and so forth, because they all work together synergistically. You can't just take one thing and say, okay, now I got me some great moral character, right? You got to do it all. So for those of you that are online there and don't have any books possibly, you can hit the drop-down menu and choose to download whatever book we're working in, plus the books that we've already covered, and therefore you can actually have the books, you can print them, you can do whatever you want to with them, other than, you can't change them or sell them or anything like that, but you can share them for sure. And so we hope you'll join us tonight in the class. Now, over the past several weeks, you've been learning about how the environment can be affected due to a lack of respect by mankind, due to a lack of basic moral character, and how the environment can be affected in many different ways, not only through life in general, but also we learned about animals and why they deserve our appreciation and respect. We saw quite a few videos. In fact, the past couple of weeks, there's been some very interesting short clips that William and Catan both played, and if you saw those, they were very simple and easy to follow, and it went through the process of explaining what the animals do and why they're on this earth, and why some are to be, let alone and let them do their job, and others are for the food supply. Each animal has its own purpose. We also learned about the air and the water. We saw what could occur to the air when we don't pay attention to what we're doing and we overwhelm the microbes in the air. Remember, we did learn that in the air there are microbes and bacteria, even all the way up to the outer layer, the firmament. And in fact, several universities have done studies on this and found these things to be true. Even in very cold atmosphere where they didn't think that anything could survive, including bacteria, they found this to be true, and they were just amazed. So as things go up into the air that we create down here, whether it be from synthetic, chemical type things, or whether it be something more from our own human existence, from the things we do, from war and so forth, the biological concerns from dead bodies laying around and dead animals laying around and so forth. All these things affect us. And so, concerning the air and then the water, we learned what some of the things are concerning the water, and what we're even doing unknowingly, I'm sure to some degree, but people are doing unknowingly. They think they are doing something great for mankind and being able to dispose of bodies in a quick, efficient way, they call it. But little do they know that what they're doing is harming mankind more than they can even imagine. So we're learning these things. And just to go over just briefly what Catan talked about last week, he was talking about the animals deserving respect. If you saw the clip, it was really great, concerning how the vultures operate, and why they're there. We don't need to look at them as an enemy, or that ugly animal, what's it doing out there? Ooh, look, it's eating that carcass on the side of the road, or run it over or something. You don't need to have that attitude. That animal does a great work for us humans. And he explained how the video explained how their system works, and the things that they could take into their body and some of the things that they couldn't, and what might make them sick and die too, some of the things that we do as human beings. Just to wrap it up there again, the last paragraph, It says that animals also assist us in keeping the earth clean, and he focused a lot on that. By consuming the carcasses of dead organisms and other waste, pigs, vultures, lobsters, catfish, and shrimp are only some of the scavengers that fall into this category. And if you remember, William showed some stuff too. We saw where the waste comes down through the waterways and gathers up in there around Louisiana, the northern part of the Gulf Coast there, and there's what's called a dead zone where hardly anything can live, if anything at all. And it's just been destroyed by the shrimping and crabbing and oyster harvesting and so forth, taking these animals out of the water that are there to clean the water. Then the pigs, we saw along the way how pigs, they can even eat humans. They can attack you. If you go into their pen, this has occurred many times. You can go back and look at the news articles of people that fell down while they were in the pig pen and couldn't get up. It was muddy and sloppy and everything, or that the pig actually attacked them and took them down, and they ate the person that was feeding them. That's pretty sick. And then that animal, they didn't just, kill it and bury it. They sent it to the slaughterhouse, and guess what? The person that ate that bacon or ham or whatever off that, they were eating human. Because the pig can't really process all that stuff efficiently. It stays in their system. Whatever they ate, 4 hours later, it's still there, and you're munching on it, if you get it that quick. But anyways, so these animals are there for a reason, so we don't need to be eating them. They're doing a job for us. There's also these the microscopic organisms that consume the waste from other animals. It's been said you can take waste and put it in a bucket of dirt and come back, and 2 weeks later or less it'll be gone. And that's true. There's microbes in the dirt that eat things that we don't want to eat, so when things are buried properly in the dirt handles a lot of it. But a lack of understanding, and that's the key thing here that we need to know, is that there's such a lack of understanding out there. Even scientists, scientists have, when you're learning about science, you learn about theory and hypotheses and everything, and how you prove things. But what has occurred along the way is that there's been a great pull towards making sure that what you come up with and the result of your theories falls into the same line of what your funding source wants it to be. If your funding source in a major university is a pharmaceutical corporation and they're funding your research, you're probably going to lean towards the outcome being beneficial to that company also, or to that industry. And that is what has occurred in all of this. We have people at EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, that have worked for major chemical companies, and they worked for them, then they went to work for the EPA, or they worked in the EPA and they were promised cushy jobs when they got out working for these corporations. And you can go online and find that. It's common knowledge. There's no law preventing it or anything. Well, what do you think if I was offered a job for $500,000 plus a year, or a spot on the board of a major corporation, and I was a public servant in EPA? Not to beat on the EPA at all. There's plenty of people, I'm sure, that are trying to do their job to the best they can and have a real concern about the environment. But what do you think? Money does have a pull to it, And so that's what's going on with all this. There's all these things that come into play. And so it's that lack of understanding of the vital role that animals play in keeping our environment healthy and functioning has led to the extinction or near extinction of many species. And so let's go back over and visit the procedure that we're on right now. It's procedure number 8. And Katana's already read this, and we got down to the point there at the bottom. It says, stress that no living organism should be treated cruelly. Have students turn to page 188 through 191 in their handbooks and read the section, Animals Also Deserve Our Appreciation and Respect. And then we're going to move on to procedure number 9. So let's go ahead and look on over to page 189. And a few facts for us. Did you know that camels are a more efficient form of travel in the desert than horses? And why would you think that? If you know, which probably a lot of people do, that camels have the ability to carry a lot of water. They can travel a lot longer than most animals can because of this ability. And so they've been proven to be the ones for desert travel, possibly even better than, a car or a dune buggy or something like that. You'd have to be carrying some gas and be aware that you could have a mechanical breakdown and so forth. But so animals have all kinds of different purposes. So the camel isn't made for us to eat. It's made not only for transportation, but I'm sure some other things too. And maybe it's used a lot like a donkey or a horse in different ways. I don't have a camel, so I don't know all the uses of a camel, but it'd be interesting to find out. In China, silkworms are raised to produce silk for cloth. So, if you have a silk tie, that silk tie could have come. I mean, I don't know. They probably have some type of synthetic silk, but this says this is imported silk right here. So, it probably came from somewhere over there in China or Malaysia or somewhere where the silkworms are raised. Pigeons were the first tame birds used as food and message couriers. Now, for those of you who live in the city and see pigeons all around gathering up on the telephone lines and on the buildings and so forth, and they drop a few surprises on you when you're walking out from under there, and, you kind of curse those birds and everything, don't do it too fast. These birds are very smart, for one thing, and they were used. Amazingly, they were used as message couriers, and they could travel for long distances carrying messages and then come back to where they started from. And, that seemed amazing to me. And I never even thought about eating a pigeon. It sounded a little bit gross to me, Here's these birds that are, hanging around in the city and, smokestacks and, close quarters and everything, and on the street and eating whatever they can on the side of the street. It sounded a little bit gross. But, I did have the opportunity one time to have a feast on pigeon. And I can tell you now that it made me, let's just say you'd probably throw rocks at your chickens. The pigeon was very tasty, and so it's a great source of food, actually. And so that's just one little thing there. But chickens, ducks, and turkeys are commonly used around the world as sources of meat and eggs. In fact, chicken is everywhere. Chicken is, it's all over this world, and it's abundant in most places. I know some it's not, but in most places, chicken is inexpensive and readily available, mostly. Eggs also, we do eat eggs. Most of us, I'm sure, do. So all animals exist for a purpose and play a role in keeping our environment healthy and balanced. And it's up to us to value, appreciate, and respect the animal kingdom. Get that? It's up to us to value. Remember values. You can go back to the character unit and you can look up on page 6, all about values, and find out what values are about. We can't hold a separate class on that right now tonight. But appreciating and respecting the animal kingdom, it will really help you to have respect for these animals. If you don't have respect for one, if you think it's fun to run over a squirrel going across the road or something, maybe you should look up and see the benefit of what squirrels do for us, and what they're for. There is no reason to purposely harm these animals. If you're being attacked by one of them, or there's a diseased animal that's coming into your dwelling or something, there's reasons that you would have to possibly exterminate one if they're attacking you. I know in some areas of the world, there's people that go and do hunts to get lions and so forth. And, on the outset, it looks like, oh, why would you be doing that? Hunting this animal, and you're not eating it or anything, and you wouldn't want to eat a lion anyway. But, what are you doing with this? And then when you dig a little deeper, you find that maybe this particular community was having a lion problem, and they were coming into people's dwellings and killing people, and grabbing children and running off with them. So that would be a great reason to do that, So maybe it wasn't just for sport. And I'm not saying it was. I don't want to get too deep into that. I'm just saying that there's two sides to every story. I mean, you hear one side presented in the media, and you look into it and find out there's something else that might be affecting it. And it goes both ways. So on page 190, let's go ahead and turn over there. Now, along the way, the peaceful solution, we've learned this quite a while ago about animal cruelty and what type of person that actually gets into that. But violence, whether directed at a human being or an animal, is one of the worst forms of disrespect. And that's a quote from the Peaceful Solution. And you look on down, and it has the warning there. Warning, warning, warning. A lack of value and appreciation for animals can result in animal cruelty. Now, I think along the way, children can get involved with other groups of children that they get involved in some of this, and throwing rocks at animals or throwing firecrackers at them and stuff like that, and they think it's funny to see them run and jump and so forth. I've even heard of them, tying tails together and throwing them over a wire and stuff like that. I've never done that. I never had the desire to do anything like that, but I've heard of some of these things take place. But then there's also, some nationalities or some people that actually will, I think it was mentioned recently about boiling lobsters alive. When they get ready to eat them, you pick out your lobster and they go in there and they boil it while it's alive. I'm sure lobsters have feelings too. And then there's some people that take dogs and hang them up and beat them, to where they're within inches of death, and then they skin them alive. And when they do that, the endorphins flow into the meat, making it a much tastier meat, they say. And that is very cruel. But it's common practice in some parts of the world. But animal cruelty is willfully inflicting pain or torturing an animal for pleasure. And this can occur if an animal's needs are neglected, such as being deprived of food and water, even. It's well documented fact that people who enjoy seeing an animal suffer are more likely to have violent and aggressive tendency towards others. In fact, according to FBI profiles, a common thread among serial killers is cruelty toward animals. You can look that up, and you will find that is that common thread, that they enjoyed being cruel towards living things. And so it followed through in their life, and they still enjoyed being cruel and torturing living things, including humans, finding some type of satisfaction out of it, But animals, like human beings, can feel pain, and they suffer when they are hurt. Let's go to the straight talk there. Hey, it's one thing to defend yourself against an animal that's trying to hurt you, or to hunt appropriate animals for food, but it's another thing to torture animals for pleasure. Keep in mind that all living things have worth and value. And that's what we were going back to when we were talking about that every animal has a job. Every animal has a purpose on this earth for them being here. They're not just here, they're not just running around and they decide to go and start eating grass. The cows don't look over at the grass and say, that stuff's getting kind of long. I guess I'll go over there and eat some of that. I mean, that might be the end result when they see some green grass and they say the grass is greener on the other side, The cow wants to go get some of that nice, fluffy looking grass. But he's not making a conscious decision to do something like that just because he decided to do it, or that he decides to go and, do something totally against what he's designed to do. But as the most intelligent species on this planet, we must also be compassionate and merciful towards others, not only animals, but to people too, and that includes animals. So don't take part in any acts of cruelty toward animals or allow someone you know to be violent toward an animal. Report any such behavior to someone in authority immediately. And if you see anybody doing that in the Peaceful Solution, well, you know, we've got teachers and counselors and so forth that can help. And I highly encourage you to try to help the individual to overcome that line of reasoning that they have. Going back to where it's not even appropriate to deprive the animal of food and water. You know, you don't just come in one evening and the animal hasn't eaten all day. If that's, I don't know, you know, it depends on how often you feed your pet or the animals that you operate with or that you deal with. But if they haven't eaten and you are their source of food, not that they're going to eat you, but you are their source of bringing food to them, you know, you shouldn't deprive them of it just because you're tired or, you know, because you're mad because they're making noise or something like that. You know, they're not going to understand why you withheld food from them if that's the case. But anyway, we need to be aware of all that and be compassionate and merciful towards all life. Looking over at page 191, I'd like to just read a few things there real quick. If you look at that, there's a couple portions of articles, if you will. The first one on the apple says, figures from the World Wildlife Fund reports reveal that black rhino numbers have fallen from 65,000 in 1970 to around 3,100 in 2003. So that's roughly, you know, 33 years, and there's been a drastic fall in those numbers. Numbers of African elephants have fallen from around 1.2 million in 1980 to just over 500,000, while the population of tigers has fallen by 95% during the past century. Wow. The World Wildlife Fund reports that there has been a sharp decline in the planet's ecosystems between 1970 and 2002, with Earth's forest cover shrinking by about 12%. Now, we talked about this also in the past few classes about how the forests, like the Amazon rainforest and many other forests around, are being depleted by overuse and abuse of the properties. Anyway, by about 12%, and then the ocean's biodiversity by 1/3, and freshwater ecosystems in the region of 55%. So these freshwater ecosystems, I think one of the things that was shown, and I might have a little, I might have that with me that we could just review it. Let me see here real quick. Well, yeah, here it is. So the things that are affected, let me put this on the overhead real quick. I know you won't be able to read it, but you can see right there. You can see how things start, like up at the top here, you know. It says, in addition to serving as the ultimate source for all pharmaceuticals that are prescribed to patients, manufacturing facilities can leak drugs directly into the environment. And so manufacturing has an effect on the environment too. And then it shows kind of the flow, and this was talking about the pharmaceuticals in particular, but many pharmaceuticals and drugs pass through the body and are excreted essentially unchanged. Then you got the landfill where a lot of them end up at, and some of that ends up in fertilization. And then you've got, you know, from the house to the toilet to the sewage treatment plant, and human pharmaceuticals and their metabolites often pass through sewage treatment plants and landfill sites and are used to fertilize agricultural land and also to irrigate with, which is totally not right. It has not, I know they say that it's okay to drink and all that, but the tests show that these things are still in the water and they're not able to be gotten out. Then you got livestock, which, you know, their excrement gets all around, but pharmaceuticals administered to livestock also enters into the environment also. And then when the vultures eat the carcass of the animal that has these pharmaceuticals in it, then they get sick and die because they're not supposed to have these pharmaceuticals. So it just keeps on flowing. I mean, it doesn't stop. It's in the land, it's in the water you're drinking, it's in the food, and it ends up down in the water. The flow of the pharmaceuticals, it shows the movement through the environment all the way down. It affects the animals, all the bird life and everything, and it also affects the fish. I remember hearing in one of the recent articles in one of the recent classes where, the fish have become kind of like male and female. The male bass was taking on actually female characteristics and actually being able to produce eggs of all things. And so these pharmaceuticals are causing horrendous things in our environment. It's not only that, though. We've already talked about that, the water and the air and all, but and the animals. This is just more of kind of going over it a little bit and letting you see what's going on and why this ecosystem is so delicate and it needs to be taken care of, and we're the ones that can take care of it. Let's see, on the same page, 191, the UK's songbird population has seen a drastic fall, with the corn bunting population declining by 92%. These are big numbers. When you're talking about, 50% and more, or more, these are huge. We're talking about 90, 95%, this type thing. The tree sparrow and the spotted flycatcher by 70%. These populations are drastically falling. And then at the very bottom right, it says the systematic overexploitation of the planet's oceans has meant that the North Atlantic's cod stocks have collapsed from an estimated spawning stock of 264,000 tons to under 60,000 tons in 1995. The world is getting dangerously close to the brink of disaster, and humans are mostly to blame. Let's go on back over to lesson plan. Let me get there. Lesson plan 7, page E, and we're going to look at procedure number 9. So I've got a few articles I'm going to share with you that are leading into this, but it says, explain to students that human beings are the dominant and most intelligent species on our planet. I'm not so sure how to do that. Sometimes it seems that we're not the most intelligent with the things that we do. It seems like the animals that have, one thing that they go and do and they don't change it, seems like they might be smarter than us, But I know that's not so, and I'm joking about that. But, we really don't show that we are very intelligent by some of the things we do. But because of this, we have a responsibility to respect our resources and our environment to ensure the survival of all living things. And it says have students turn to pages 192 through 194 and read the sections. It's not just about us and getting to the heart of the matter. So we're going to do that now. Turn on over to page 192. And while we're going there, I want to say that, it's us. It's us that needs to change. And we're going to talk a little bit about the laws that have been put in place and so forth to protect this environment. But let me just say real quick that if you look at that overhead, the attitude that we have is everything. I know I show this all the time when I come up here, but it's hard sometimes to get that in our head, that it is our attitude. We either have an attitude of, optimism and care and concern about others and animals and plant life and the environment, or we have a pessimistic attitude like, what does it matter anyway? Life sucks. Everything's bad. I just got divorced, this, that. You name it. You could come up with so many things and reasons just to throw in the towel, But we have to be optimistic about things and understand that it is our attitude. There's stories, many articles about people who have overcome insurmountable odds that you and I haven't even begun to deal with. And they did it because they had a positive attitude and outlook on life, even though it just would seem like insurmountable odds. So, And always being thankful for what we do have can help us to have that right attitude and have an attitude of care and concern, thankfulness, optimism, being thankful for the things that we have. And, knowing that there's always people that have less than us and their life is so much worse than us. Think about those in war-torn countries. Okay, I'm getting off track a little bit here, but not really. Look at page 192. It's not just about us. All right. So now that we've explored what it means to respect our environment, do you think that the human race has done a great job of respecting the resources that we need to sustain our lives? Do you? I mean, it's unbelievable what has occurred. Environmental organizations and many individuals concerned about the welfare of our planet would say, no, we have not respected the worth of our planet or its resources. In fact, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization has stated that at the current rate of consumption, the Earth's resources might soon be reduced to the point at which the living world would be unable to sustain life in the manner that we know it. Now, I can tell you the Earth is able to sustain a lot more people than we even have on this earth at this time if it's taken care of. We can look and see, at one time it was thought that there was no way we could possibly deplete this earth. And they were right. They had the right attitude until people started abusing the land, the water, the air, the animals, the people, and started doing these things. And then there started these changes, Look at the Dust Bowl, even not that long ago, back in the 30s and 40s, back in there, the Dust Bowl, that was very productive land until people just started plowing and plowing and plowing and planting and harvesting and plowing and not even giving the land a rest until they just beat it up and the topsoil all blew away. I mean, unbelievable. We could see the results of these things. Read the following information from an article entitled Earth Will Expire by 2050 and determine for yourself if respect is being shown for our blue planet called Earth. Now, this is a study by the World Wildlife Fund again, and it warns that the human race is plundering the planet at a pace that outstrips its capacity to support life. The report, based on scientific data from across the world, reveals that more than a third of the natural world has been destroyed by humans over the past 3 decades, okay? And experts say that seas are becoming empty to fish, forests necessary for absorbing carbon dioxide are being destroyed, freshwater supplies are becoming scarce and polluted, and scientists, again, remember, scientists, a lot of trust is put in scientists, but the outcome of their thoughts and their theories and everything else come from what they have learned and who they learned from and where they learned from and their environment and how they grew up in looking at the environment, all of these things. Scientists, where the dogs are beaten and skinned alive before they're fed, they probably don't think twice about that, and partake of it because it's part of their culture. That's just one example. But, you got to remember that scientists are not all created equal. But scientists who examined data for 350 kinds of mammals, birds, reptiles, and fish also found the numbers of many species have more than halved. It is difficult to determine how many of these species are extinct because a species must disappear for 50 years before it can even be declared extinct, okay? And all organisms, from the simplest to the most complex and intelligent, share many similarities and depend on the same resources for survival. So all organisms, you get that? Not just animals, not just people, not just the animals that we can see, but all organisms depend on these things. They depend on the same resources for survival. And as science finds out, which they haven't even known until recently, and they still don't even know the extent of it, but just like finding out that the bacteria and microbes existed up in the air, 28,000 feet away and more. They had no idea. This was just over the past 20 or 30 years that they even learned that. And, are we going to trust everything in their hands? I mean, come on. It really is up to us. What does all this have to do with character education? What does all this have to do with the peaceful solution? Why are we even talking about all this? You know why? Because the only way the difference is going to be made is going to be through us. It's not going to be made through passing laws and so forth. I mean, let me continue this for a minute. But on page 192, the need for air, water, and food is not unique to human beings. This need connects all life and makes us interdependent. If we destroy our resources by polluting or overusing them, then ultimately all life will be afflicted. Well, what would cause me to stop polluting or overusing these resources? If I'm the CEO of a rich multinational conglomerate organization, what would cause me to stop doing this? Do you think the EPA coming in and slapping my hand with a $10,000 fine is going to stop me from making billions of dollars? Do you think that? No. Do you think that these laws as they're made and all these environmental think tanks and these gatherings where people come up with all these things and these new rules and everything is going to make a difference on me doing that when it comes to billions of dollars? No. What's going to make the difference? Well, if you think the laws are going to make the difference and that we need to go talk to Congress and get some more laws, yeah, got news for you. Okay, here's one of the problems with it. Now, you can't read this, but I'm going to read it to you. It says the impacts of environmental regulations on competitiveness. Let's break that down for a minute. The impacts of environmental regulation on competitiveness. So the impact of environmental laws on my being able to make money, or you're being able to make money, or whatever, right? That's kind of like translated. So this article reviews the empirical literature on the impacts of environmental regulations on firms' competitiveness, as measured by trade, industry location, employment, productivity, innovation, and the evidence shows that environmental regulations can lead to statistically significant adverse effects on trade and employment, etc., 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 okay? And this is, so this is one of the problems that the people that are, wanting to make these laws and helping to make these laws and making these laws, they run into is competitiveness. And so they try to look at it and say, well, this company over here was doing this much business 2 years ago, and we can't just shut them down to the same level as this company over here that was doing just a small fraction of that business. We can't just shut it down. That would put people out of work. It would put, the money wouldn't be made. We wouldn't be getting the taxes. I wouldn't be here in Congress or whatever. Okay, so these things come into play. And this is rampant. I can tell you in the business that I'm in, depending upon how many items you sold in the previous year, it has effect on what you can get this coming year. And that has an effect on, trucks that use gasoline and eat, and the people eat that drive it, and all this and everything, and so there's all this money being spent, and there's all this pollution taking place, and there's more and more of resources being used, but not for me. It would be some for me, but what about the guy that sells 10 or 20 times as much as what I do? He's getting to use more of the resources along the way. See, this competitiveness thing is something that they come up with and say, we've got to be fair with these big companies that pay these big incomes and so forth. But so how does environmental regulation affect firms' competitiveness? In the context of environmental policies, competitiveness effects result from differences or a regulatory stringency, meaning, they're lenient here but stricter here, applied across entities that are competing in the same market. For example, some firms might be regulated while others are exempt from the regulation. Huh? What determines that? Who determines that? So, long story short, some companies are going to be given a get-out-of-jail-free card to use a lot more of the resources than other companies. Some companies given a get-out-of-jail card to pour toxic waste into the waterways where others can't. And so on, and so on, and so on. And so these environmental laws, I just want to ask you if you think they've helped. I'm going to read this to you. Maybe you can see it. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let's just talk about the environmental laws that have been made over the years. Okay, so now remember, this is 2023, and we've seen a lot of videos and articles and everything lately showing how our water is defiled, the food is defiled, the land is defiled, everything is so messed up. I mean, when's it going to end? Well, you know, years ago, there was and I have some more articles on it, but we don't have time, but the National Environmental Act, NEPA, I think that was the one that was put in effect when Richard Nixon was in office. You know, that's one thing, and it covers a lot of ground. The Endangered Species Act of 1973. Now, we just got through reading about all these species that are being depleted from just a 20-year period. Well, this is since 1973. Has that law worked? Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. Well, you know, I see one thing they're doing is they're trying to recycle water rather than being conservative with it, and it's not working. The Clean Water Act. Well, the water has gotten dirtier and nastier and filthier with more pharmaceuticals and more blood and more everything else in it than ever before. And that's taking place right now. The Safe Water Drinking Act, the Clean Air Act, Toxic Substances Control Act of 1976. 1976? That's almost 50 years ago. Has that law made a difference in this past 50 years? No, it's gotten worse. So do you think that more laws are going to make a difference? No, it's not going to make any difference. You know what's going to make a difference? Knowing the difference between right and wrong. That's what's going to make the difference right there. Morals is what's going to make the difference right there. That's why you and I are sitting here tonight, and that's why those of you online are on there tonight, whether you wanted to be or not, and whether you know it or not, you're there for a reason. And that reason, again, I want you to go back to that overhead for a second. Morals, what do they have to do with my character? You know, and what does all this have to do with anything about the peaceful solution? Well, this is why. Because you should be able to see that laws are not going to make the difference. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of laws on the books, trying to handle the environment. Not only international or the United States or national with different countries and so forth, but every county, every city, even down the road here somewhere, there's laws that say that if you build this building right here, you have to have a drainage ditch built right here to allow the water to flow, and all these different things that you got to come up with, and you have to have the backflow thing on your faucets, and you have to have filters up inside the vent hoods, and you have to have this, and you have to have that. And, these laws, are they really doing any benefit? Have we seen any? Well, no. Over the past 50, 60, 70 years, I think we have proof that it hasn't worked. So this is what we have to do right here. This is why we have to do this. So I'm going to read this to you just a minute. So regardless of culture, religion, or environment, there are some values that all people share. They're called moral values. This is what's going to make the difference, is really caring about other people and the environment and the animals, and caring that there's going to be an earth for future generations, caring that there is going to be clean water that's healthy for us in future generations, A moral value is like a line that divides wrong behavior from right behavior. People from all walks of life, young or old, big or small, rich or poor, share some of the same basic concepts of moral values. And, there's that line between right and wrong right there, once again. And morality can be divided into three basic categories. Behavior and attitude. Remember that word attitude? Remember, attitude is everything. It's behavior and attitude towards all life, human, animal, plant. Behavior and attitude towards possessions and property. and then behavior and attitude towards the environment. And that's what we're talking about. And this is what's going to make the change. When you really care about these things and really want to have this moral attitude built up in your life, you're not going to want to pollute the waterways. You're not going to want to go to war and leave dead bodies laying all over the place to go up into the atmosphere and not be dealt with properly, and blood laying all over for people to get messed up by, getting the waterways and everything. You're not going to want to do that. You're not going to care if your corporation would make $1 billion if you just did this one little thing that hurt this one little community. I mean, this community of 1,000 people, what are they to you? You know? But if you have great moral character, you are going to care. And you're going to do everything in your power to keep from hurting human, animal, and plant life and the environment, and hurting anybody else. You're not going to want to steal their property. You're not want to condemn their property so you can get it cheap for your condo that you want to build and so forth. But moral principles in regards to human life means acknowledging and accepting that life is valuable and all people have the potential to contribute to society, okay? And I got to go ahead and move on a little bit right there, but I encourage you to go back and read about values on page 6 and on through there, and you can go ahead and read page 8. That's what I was reading from, and go ahead and hit back there on your character unit. I did want to say that, when talking about those environmental laws, I know there's one industry that doesn't seem to be affected by it much because they just keep growing and growing, and here it is right here. I'll just share it with you. The environmental CSR reporting by the arms industry. Well, there's little reporting that comes from the arms industry. It's not required. Most of what they do is voluntary, So the arms industry is one of those exempt industries from the environmental laws and regulations. And, when you think about it, I read an article about how people at gun ranges are one of the biggest sources of lead contamination and harm to the environment. And I'm thinking, gun ranges? What in the world? How many weapons are practiced with and tried every day by the militaries around this world? And then what occurs when the environment when this takes place? It says you can't ignore the explosive weapons environmental impact. Well, what's going on right now all over this world? How's that affecting the environment, Mr. Lawmaker? Let's make some more laws that prevent that from taking place. Well, that hasn't occurred in 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 years. Think about it. And so then, one thing we got to look at is that with all that taking place all over the world right now, think about the environmental concerns. I'm not talking about just the bomb blowing up and leaving its toxic substances all over the place, including people breathing it in, and the buildings that are exploded that have asbestos in them and all kinds of industrial waste up in them that are floating through the air. And, people aren't even concerned that the wind currents bring it, like right over here after a period of time. Just because it's taking place halfway across the earth doesn't mean it's not going to be here anytime soon. And so when you start thinking about just what one area that's blown up and demolished like that does to the environment, what has it done to the water supply? Pipes breaking, sewage pipes breaking, sewage ditches, everything going up into the air, everything going into the water, everything going into the breathing it and so forth, It's a major concern, but man, I don't know. There seems to be a lot of concern about, people saying they're concerned about the environment and, wanting to stop you from burning firewood and wanting to stop you from having a stove that burns anything. They want you to go all electric, well, all these things that are made, the manufacturing of all these things takes resources too. And so it's just this one big synergistic circle that comes back around. And what is the answer to it? I mean, once again, it's not the laws. The laws haven't proven to take effect. The laws haven't proven to change anybody's mind or any of that. So on page 193, let's go there real quick. Getting to the heart of the matter. There was once a common misconception that Earth's resources could not be depleted. Individuals and organizations alike took it for granted that as they cleared away the forests, trees would simply grow back. It was thought that the toxic chemicals dumped into streams and rivers would harmlessly float away, and that garbage thrown into the oceans would simply sink to the bottom with no consequences to the environment. We mistakenly believed that there would always be enough clean water to drink, forests to supply us with oxygen, lakes to provide us with fish, and rich soil with which to grow grain and vegetation. But as you have learned, the Earth's resources are not inexhaustible. Given time and a continued lack of awareness, respect, and appreciation, the choices we make as individuals and as a society will continue to deplete and pollute our air, water, and land. We can no longer afford to take our planet and its resources for granted. And you see down there at the bottom it says, we are responsible for the state of our environment, therefore it's up to us to make the difference. Now, going back a moment into our character unit, because this is really, this word does really encompass it, character. Moral character. That consists of being responsible. It consists of showing respect to everybody and all animals, plant life, the environment, everything. It consists of accepting things, accepting people and their differences. Not meaning that you have to agree with every one of them, but you accept that that's the way they are, and we know that a lot of people need to be taught. Even those people that are making the laws that aren't working right now, they need to be taught. And they need to be looking at, with great moral character, how would they make this decision? Without any thoughts of money, any thoughts of being elected again, any thoughts of their wives' yoga classes and their children's soccer classes and everything else that they got to pay for, and their colleges and everything else, and what their constituents expect and so forth. Making decisions based upon great moral character. You can demonstrate a moral attitude by being respectful towards all people. It means not taking advantage of others, but rather showing them care and concern. But an immoral attitude towards life consists of behaviors that devalue, belittle, hurt, and take from others both emotionally and physically. Behaviors that include name-calling, teasing, bullying, and discriminating cause others to feel inferior and disregard their worth as human beings. I want to read part of this to you. The title, if you can see it, is Environmental Approaches to Nuclear Weapons. So nuclear weapons supposedly stopped being tested due to a couple treaties that some of the larger governments made with each other. Of course, it did continue on in different areas, and including with these larger governments too. I don't think anybody ever really stopped. And in getting rid of the nuclear weapons, it created a lot of waste, and downsizing is what they did. But what's interesting is when you downsize from a bomb the size of the Hiroshima bomb, when you downsize from that and you get rid of 10 of those bombs, but you just made one bomb that is equal to 5,000 of those, what have you really done, But this was a book. It's called Environmental Approaches to Nuclear Weapons. It's by Martina Kurtz and George Vinuelas. So the most common approach to analyzing the environmental regulation of nuclear weapons under international law, there's the law again, has been through the lens of international humanitarian law. Now, there's laws that are in place concerning war, right? It's okay to have a war as long as you obey these laws. One of the laws is, you're not really supposed to bomb hospitals. You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to bomb children, civilians, and so forth along the way. But all these laws, they have loopholes, and it doesn't really matter anyway. When someone's at war, the law that stands firm, I think, is all is fair in love and war, is what they say out there, you know. And that's pretty much true, because all is fair in war. So, or they say it's fair, you know. But anyway, they talk about the Geneva Convention in here and this international law, and as well as everyone agreeing not to harm the environment during these hostilities. How are you not going to harm the environment when you blow up a building or a city or a house or any bombs, just blowing up the bombs? How are you not going to harm the environment? And this is why it's so funny. I just had to even do this. And they're talking about nuclear weapons here. And I think that, you know, pictures speak for themselves. Here's one picture right here. And this is just the shot of the, I don't know if this was Nagasaki or Hiroshima, but when you look at that, I mean, everything is just totally leveled. And you know, there was a river or a creek or something, I think it was a river that ran through one of these cities that, you know, all this radiation and everything went into it, all the human waste, all the dead animals and blood and guts and everything else went into that water, went into the land, went into the air. That was an environmental disaster for sure. You know, and they were even thinking about making laws about the environment even back then. And so I just wanted to point out that, you know, for those of you who think that we need to go and protest in Washington and get more laws on the environment and so forth, hey, man, it's been done. You know, it's already there. They've already got the laws, and they're making more laws and thousands more. And you can go to the local city council and you can get more laws for the environment. You can go up to the lake and get a bunch of people together and get more laws protecting the environment. You can go to Abilene. You can go to the air base over there and see if you can get them to make more laws to, you know, protect the environment. But you know what it all comes down to, and what it looks like things are coming to, really? It's going to be one really, really bad environmental challenge when this takes place. And, you know, that's what it seems like it's all leading to. And just one of those bombs, which there's been, you know, thousands exploded in testing and everything, but just one of those bombs, the effect on the environment that it has is beyond measure. And no matter what laws that's made by mankind, it's not going to change that. Only your attitude, the attitude of respect, of wanting a great moral character, of not wanting to do any harm to anybody, that's what's going to make the difference, okay? And that's why we're here. So we look forward to having you at more classes of the teacher certification course, and we look forward to you practicing the peaceful solution too, and all of us taking the books off the shelf and actually using them, right? So I'm glad all of you were able to attend, and we will be back here on 10/22. That's Sunday at 5:30 p.m. We look forward to seeing you here again, those of you here at headquarters and those of you online. And it's been a great honor and privilege to be here tonight. Thank you.